If you've made it this far into Sophie's journey, you're now part of her story too. I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below and let's see how far this story has traveled. Your thoughts mean the world to us, so feel free to share your favorite moment or a theory you have. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. A powerful new chapter arrives tomorrow, and trust me, it's one you won't want to miss. The girl on the bike had a hidden agenda, and it started with a dead CFO Sophie. Adams pedaled hard, her legs burning as the wind whipped past her cheeks. The sun had barely risen over the Chicago skyline, casting a pale gold hue across the quiet streets. Her bike, an old steel-framed relic she'd bought for $30 on Craigslist, squeaked with every rotation, but it carried her with purpose. Nearly 15 miles stood between her small apartment and the Silver Monarch, one of the city's most luxurious fine dining restaurants. Most applicants arrived in cars, dressed in designer heels or polished loafers. Sophie arrived with helmet hair, wind-chapped cheeks, and a storm of determination buried beneath her neatly ironed uniform. She locked her bike to the railing outside the glittering entrance, glancing up at the silver-etched glass doors that marked the gateway to a world far beyond her own. From the outside, it was all gold trim, marble columns, and crystal chandeliers. But inside, Sophie knew, lived secrets. Her reflection in the glass stared back. 26 years old, sharp brown eyes, and the kind of resolve born from grief that never really heals. This wasn't just a job. This was an assignment. 3 years ago, her father, Henry Adams, a brilliant CFO at Whitmore Global, had been found dead in his office. The official report claimed suicide, following allegations of embezzlement. But Sophie never believed it. He was the kind of man who believed in solving problems, not running from them. He believed in truth, in accountability, and most of all, in her. The thought of his last words, scribbled in a note she couldn't believe he wrote, haunted her. For 3 years, she studied at night, earned a degree in forensic accounting, and pieced together fragments of a cover-up too perfect to be accidental. And every trail, every thread, had led her to one place, the Silver Monarch. The elite restaurant was more than a hotspot for the city's richest and most powerful. It was a regular haunt for the very family who now owned Whitmore Global. If there were answers, she would find them here. Not in boardrooms, not in headlines, but from the inside, unseen. As she stepped inside, the shift in temperature hit her first. Cool, scented air, perfumed with jasmine and fresh linen. The marble, beneath her sneakers, gleamed. Staff buzzed around her, all tailored uniforms and tight smiles. No one looked twice at the girl with the backpack. Perfect. That was exactly what she wanted, because being invisible was part of the plan. Sophie took a deep breath, adjusted the sleeves of her uniform, and walked toward the back, where new staff were being briefed. But even as she tried to blend in, she could feel the weight of her mission pressing down on her shoulders. Her father's memory wasn't just the reason she was here. It was the fuel that would carry her through everything to come. She wasn't just serving food. She was serving justice. And it all began with a bike ride. Logan Whitmore wasn't supposed to notice the new waitress. He never did. Not really. His presence at the Silver Monarch each Thursday night was ritual, an obligation more than a desire. The Whitmore family owned the restaurant, of course, along with nearly every skyscraper on the block, but Logan wasn't interested in real estate or reputation. What consumed him, what haunted him, was a face in a faded photo, and a question no one else dared to ask. What really happened to Henry Adams? It had been 3 years since Henry's alleged suicide, 3 years since the press tore him apart with stories of greed and betrayal. But Logan remembered the man differently. Henry had been more than just the company's CFO. He had been Logan's mentor, someone who had treated him like more than just the heir to a billion-dollar empire. He had seen potential in Logan when even Logan couldn't see it in himself. And then one day, He was gone. The official story made sense on paper, but not in Logan's gut. The numbers didn't add up, and the people who insisted they did, they had more to gain than to lose. So, Logan had done what no one expected from the spoiled heir to Whitmore Global. He started digging. Quietly, thoroughly. Late nights spent combing old files, private audits no one knew about, and back channel. Conversations with people who had long been paid to stay silent. What he'd uncovered so far wasn't enough to go public, but it was enough to convince him that Henry didn't take his own life. And then, she showed up. The new waitress. He first saw her across the dining room, shoulders tense, eyes constantly scanning, not just watching guests, but studying them. She wasn't just learning her role. She was observing, tracking, listening. She moved like someone who didn't belong but refused to disappear. At first, Logan chalked it up to nerves. But the more he watched her, the less it looked like fear, and the more it looked like strategy. When she poured his water, their eyes met for half a second too long. That's when he saw it. Something he hadn't seen since Henry's funeral. Determination. She was hiding something, yes, but not guilt. Purpose. And something about the shape of her jaw, the fire in her stare, stirred something deep in Logan's. Memory. He didn't know her name yet, didn't know her reason for being there. But instinct told him it wasn't a coincidence. Not at all. Later that night, he reviewed security footage from the restaurant, something he rarely did. And there, she was, arriving on an old bicycle, breathless, cheeks flushed from the cold. While others pulled up in black cars and designer shoes, she chained up her bike with shaking fingers and squared her shoulders like a soldier heading into battle. Logan sat back in his chair, chills crawling down his spine. Whoever she was, she wasn't just a waitress. She was chasing the same ghost, and now, so was he. Sophie thought she had prepared for every possibility. Every cold glance from the elite guests, every sharp word from her supervisors, every whispered insult that marked her as less than, but nothing had prepared her for the moment. Catherine Whitmore looked up from her private dining table and stared straight into her soul. The older woman's eyes narrowed, her hand freezing in midair as she clutched a delicate silver pendant around her neck. For a moment, Sophie felt the weight of a century-old empire pressing down on her. It was brief, maybe 2 seconds, but in those seconds, something passed between them. Recognition, shock, fear. Sophie kept walking, heart hammering. She'd trained herself not to panic, not to give anything away. But that gaze lingered in her mind long after the encounter ended. That night, when her shift was over and the city streets glistened with rain, she biked home faster than usual, the cold biting through her coat. She needed answers. Now. At home, she tore open the bottom drawer of her desk and pulled out a worn envelope she had never dared to open. It was labeled in her mother's handwriting, for when the time comes. Inside were photographs, old ones, some of a young man she'd never seen before but who looked strikingly familiar. Soft eyes, a gentle smile, a jawline that echoed her own. On the back of one photo, the name was scrawled in faded ink, Andrew Whitmore. Her breath caught. She knew that name. Everyone in Chicago's business circles did. Andrew had been the younger son of Catherine Whitmore, the artist who had died in a car accident decades ago, long before Sophie was born. He was rarely spoken of, his name nearly erased from public record. But Sophie's mother? She had once been his secretary. And more than that, it seemed, his lover. Suddenly, everything tilted. Sophie wasn't just a waitress chasing justice for a man who raised her. She was a Whitmore by blood. The revelation shattered her carefully crafted world. Her investigation, her vendetta, her rage toward the Whitmores, all of it had been based on an identity she no longer fully understood. The people she was trying to expose were her family. The enemy wore her name. She confronted her mother that night, her voice cracking. Her mother broke down, confessing everything. The secret affair, the pregnancy, the car crash that took Andrew before he ever knew he had a daughter. And then Henry Adams, the man who stepped in, raised Sophie as his own, and later paid the ultimate price for protecting them both. Sophie sat alone for hours after that conversation, staring at the photos. She wasn't just Henry's daughter. She was Andrew's legacy, Catherine's granddaughter. And if Catherine had recognized her, how long until the rest of the family did too? Worse yet, how long until the man who had orchestrated all their tragedies noticed her presence? Because now Sophie realized she wasn't just digging into the past, she was the past, and someone had gone to great lengths to bury her existence. Sophie couldn't sleep, not after learning the truth, that she was a Whitmore by blood, the daughter of a man erased from family history. The next morning, she spread every document, photo and note, across her small kitchen table. What started as a personal investigation had exploded into something far deeper. She wasn't just following a trail of numbers anymore. She was unraveling a legacy built on lies, and one name kept surfacing: Victor Hale. He'd been part of the Whitmore inner circle for as long as Sophie could remember. Chief financial advisor, trusted family friend. He was in photos dating back 30 years, always in the background, always smiling. The public saw him as polished, wise, indispensable. But to Sophie, that smile had begun to look more like a mask. She dug deeper, using every skill she'd gained during her forensic accounting degree. Transactions began to reveal patterns. Offshore accounts connected to shell companies, funds siphoned from product launches, manipulated asset reports. And always, Victor's name appeared in the approval chains. But that wasn't all. In one of Henry's old USB drives, hidden inside a hollowed-out book, Sophie found an audio file. It was grainy, recorded secretly, but unmistakable. Victor's voice. Calm, calculated, threatening. If you don't bury this, Henry, you won't just lose your job. You'll lose everything. Sophie's chest tightened. Her adoptive father had tried to expose Victor, and died for it. Later that day, Sophie sat in the back office at the Silver Monarch, staring at the Whitmore family's Thursday reservation on the schedule. They were all coming again. Logan, Catherine, and Victor Hale. She needed to act. That evening, as she served water and wine like any other night, she kept her focus sharp. Victor sat to the right of Catherine, whispering something into her ear. He didn't glance at Sophie once, not until dessert. As she cleared a tray of glasses, she passed behind him. He turned, abruptly. Their eyes met. Just for a second. He knew. She didn't smile, didn't blink. But a chill rippled down her spine. That moment was enough. Back in the employee corridor, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You're playing a dangerous game. Stop digging. VH Sophie stared at the screen. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. Victor Hale wasn't just corrupt. He was watching her. She wasn't safe anymore. She slipped into the alley behind the restaurant, dialing Logan's private number. When he answered, she said only 3 words. He killed Henry. Silence. Then, Logan replied, his voice low. Come to my office, midnight. We need to talk. That night, Sophie biked through dark streets, rain in her face, adrenaline in her blood. She wasn't sure who to trust. But she knew one thing. Victor Hale had been pulling strings in the shadows for decades. He'd framed Henry, silenced Andrew, manipulated Catherine, controlled Logan. And now, he was coming for her. But Sophie wasn't, just another name on his list. She was the one he didn't see coming. Sophie had spent most of her life feeling like an outsider. Now, she was at the center of a legacy that spanned 3 powerful families and 1 long-standing betrayal. After her midnight meeting with Logan Whitmore, everything began moving at a dizzying pace. He had believed her. Not just believed, he'd shown her his own secret files, audits he'd kept hidden from even his family. Together, their pieces formed the full picture, and at the center of that picture, like wrought beneath polished wood, was Victor Hale. The day they confronted Catherine. Whitmore was the day everything changed. At first, Catherine didn't want to hear it. She was sharp, proud, fiercely protective of the empire she'd helped build. But when Sophie placed Andrew's letters on the table, real ink, real handwriting, her son's voice preserved in time, something cracked behind the matriarch's cold exterior. And when Logan added Henry's audio recording, her denial crumbled. Victor had betrayed them all, and he wasn't working alone. It turned out Victor had been manipulating not just the Whitmores, but also the Monroes. Isabella Monroe, Logan's fiancée and CEO of Monroe Biotech, had been entangled in Victor's schemes for years, unknowingly feeding him confidential data in exchange for his advice. When she discovered the truth, the betrayal nearly broke her. But like Sophie, she didn't fall apart. She fought back. The 3 of them, Sophie, Logan, and Isabella, formed an alliance no one could have predicted. 3 names once divided by corporate competition and buried secrets now united by one purpose: to rebuild. The plan was bold. Transform. The Silver Monarch, the place where Sophie had once served drinks to the people who destroyed her family, into something entirely new, a foundation, a living legacy. A war cry disguised as hope. They called it the Adams-Whitmore-Monroe Foundation. Its mission was simple: protect the vulnerable, support whistleblowers, fund independent inventors, and expose corporate fraud. And maybe, just maybe, make sure no one else lost a father, a future, or their identity to men like Victor Hale. Catherine, to everyone's surprise, including her own, backed the project fully. She stepped down from her position at Whitmore Global and used her influence to accelerate Victor's investigation. In a public press conference that shocked the city, she acknowledged Sophie as her granddaughter and heir. The announcement sent shockwaves through Chicago's elite. But Sophie didn't care about the tabloids. She had work to do. 6 months later, she stood at the entrance of the newly renovated Silver Monarch, now a bustling headquarters, filled with researchers, lawyers, and dreamers. Her old bike, the one she'd chained out front on her first day, was now mounted on the lobby wall behind glass, a symbol of how far she'd come. Logan walked in, holding a folder of new applicants. Isabella followed, greeting guests with sharp grace. They weren't just rebuilding their names. They were rewriting history. Sophie glanced out the window, her heart steady, her voice calm. They had turned a battlefield into a sanctuary. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged. Because now, she wasn't chasing justice. She was justice. If you made it to the end of Sophie's journey, thank you for staying with us through every twist, every secret, and every truth finally brought to light. Now we'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. Let's see how far this story has reached. But beyond that, tell us. Which moment hit you the hardest? Was it when Sophie discovered her true bloodline? When Victor's betrayal came to light? Or when the families united to create something powerful out of pain? Your voice matters here. We don't just tell stories. We build a community of thinkers, feelers, and believers in justice. So don't hold back. Share your thoughts, your theories, or even your own personal connection to Sophie's mission. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the notification bell, because tomorrow's story dives even deeper into the shadows of power and redemption. Thank you for being part of this journey. You are the reason we tell stories that matter.